I was fortunate to get selected to go to the hazardous devices school, the FBI's bomb school, finished up, was certified for 53 weeks until Timothy McVeigh bombed the Murrah building. That was my first case. So Waco, we had done manhunts and tactical operations where snipers may have been deployed, but that unprecedented event in Waco was sort of the first real out-of-state deployment for me. And then my first case as a bomb technician was the Murrah building. The only example of a large vehicle-borne IED was the first Trade Center attack, which was horrible. That was about a 1,200-pound device. This was around 5,000 pounds of explosives. It destroyed, a city block downtown, 300 buildings. You asked about other cases. I guess 9/11 would come into that. Bracketing some other things like the Atlanta Olympic bombing, and then an undercover investigation, which was my last case.
I'm Steve Murphy, DEA Special Agent retired and now host of the Game of Crimes podcast. If you've seen the Netflix series Narcos, then you know my story. I now bring you stories of heroism and bravery from our law enforcement and military heroes, and occasionally from the criminals that they faced. Welcome to Game of Crimes. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to this week's episode of Game of Crimes with Murph in the morning. Geez, this is going to be a good interview. I can't even talk yet. Thank you so much for coming back every week. It's a pleasure, and I know I couldn't do any of this without you. I've got another great guest for you this week. This man, and he's got a really, really different story, which is what intrigued me. He started out as an accountant. He wanted to be an engineer, but then something came along that said, we need accountants. So he said, well, I'll do that. And you know what? He is now a 31-year veteran of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, the agency that we all like to give a hard time to, but the same guys that'll give it right back to you. You can't have thin skin in this business. You've heard me say that multiple times. He's also an avid scuba diver. He's a hiker. He's an instructor. He's a public speaker. And he's even testified before our U.S. Congress on some really important issues. He's got a book out. He's the author of Hazardous Materials, and the title is longer than that, but I'm not going to tell you the rest of the title because it'll give it away before I'm ready for you to know what it is. And yes, having done all that, he still worked fraud cases for the FBI. But wait until you hear about these other things he was involved with, because it just, in my mind, it just doesn't go with accounting. But, I'm a simple person. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's my true honor and pleasure to welcome Barry Black to the Game of Crimes. Barry, thank you so much for coming on the show, sir.
Hey, Murph, it's my pleasure. It's great to see you.
Thank you very much. It's, and I just want to shout out real quick to Patrick O'Donnell, who is the host of Cops and Writers podcast. Patrick made the introduction to Barry and I, and you folks that regularly follow Games of Crimes, you know that Patrick and I are good buddies whenever he comes to Florida, which seems to be about 3 or 4 times a year, which is really good. We get together and have lunch, and whoever's there, we don't make fun of them, but everybody else is fair game. You know what? I waited till today, and I sent a message to Barry, and I said, hey, I've got this section in the podcast called Small Town Police Blotter. I told him what it was. I said, would you participate? And just like every other cop that comes on here, never even hesitated. So Barry's in Oklahoma. Barry, you want to tell us about some goofy criminal out your way?
You bet. This story comes from the Tulsa Police Department. And back on one Halloween, according to the police, an officer left his patrol car unlocked while he stopped for coffee. A subject allegedly walked up, got in the cruiser, turned on the siren, and streamed the whole high-speed chase live on Facebook. At points, he was singing and bragging about the police chase. The pursuit lasted 30 to 40 minutes in high speed. Officers finally found him and arrested him by his parents' home, of course. And what's odd is that reports say that he was using the officer's iPad to do the live stream. The subject was taken into Tulsa County Jail on multiple complaints, including eluding and resisting arrest and possession of a firearm by a felon. He had prior convictions, and of course, public reporting focused on the arrest and that Facebook stream. Follow-up outcome was not really widely reported. Per the Tulsa Blotter.
What in the world was that guy thinking, right?
You see some strange things if you do this long enough.
That's the truth. Holy cow. Like he's going to get caught. I mean, he's putting his face out there on social media while he's doing it. What a moron.
Yeah, we used to say you can't outrun the radio, right? So now live stream's even better.
You can outrun me, but you can't outrun Mr. Motorola. Oh, man. Barry, thank you so much for playing along with that, buddy. And
sure.
You folks know I live here in Florida, and you can tell I'm not in my regular office here doing the podcast. My wife and I were over at Satellite Beach for a few days and enjoying the weather. Got to tell you, I'm going to show you on my tan line so you can see that right there. You thought I was going to show you something else, didn't you? What's wrong with you?
I wasn't
people?
sure.
Y'all sick? Come on now. But I've got a story now from Orange County, which is where I live. That's my home county now. And this is a few years ago. The deputies in Orange County, they say a guy named Jalen Alexander, he allegedly, and there's my favorite word, allegedly, he did it. He approached a 71-year-old man who had left his manual transmission car running while placing his walker in the trunk of his car. And what's Jalen do? The jerk gun jumps in there and tries to steal the car. When he tried to drive away, he kept stalling out because the idiot didn't know how to drive a manual transmission. We call it a stick. So what's he do? He abandons the car. He runs across the street and he steals another car. But this one has an automatic transmission. He was able to get away with it. But the deputies, they did their job. They located him a little bit later and put the cuffs right on him. He was booked in on felony charges, including carjacking. That's a nice one. Grand theft of a motor vehicle and battery on a person 65 or older. And let me tell you, I qualify for that now. So they should give us all guns just in case Jalen comes along with any of his buddies.
Crazy times.
I'm just having some fun, y'all. So don't send me hate mail. No, you can if you want to. I've got a special button on my computer. It's called delete. I'll take care of this for you. So, oh, let's have some fun today, man. So, Barry, I let the silliness stop now, and we'll get into your story. So if you would, tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, your family dynamics, what mom and dad did. Did you have brothers and sisters in high school? Did you play sports, that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, I grew up in a little town outside Birmingham, Alabama called Homewood. It's a great community. Really lived there my entire life till I went to school. Family, pretty standard. My dad was in the insurance business. Mom worked for an anesthesiologist. Had one sister. She wanted to go into nursing. And since I was a kid, I wanted to be in the FBI. Since I was like 10 years old, I played Joy League sports, Park League ball. And one of my coaches volunteered for that, and I learned he was an FBI agent. So that just fed my desire. TV and movies, of course, got me interested first. But then when I started talking to my old coach, my trajectory was set, and that's what I wanted to do.
Good for you, man. That's what sports did you play? Did you play football?
Played football a little bit. I wasn't big enough to play in school. There's some big boys down in Tuscaloosa, but in elementary, middle school, a little bit of sports in high school. I played in bands. I've been playing the drums for about 50 years, and stacked groceries at the local Piggly Wiggly. You'll know that name. Just kind of a standard upbringing, and I got very fortunate to be able to live my dream as an FBI agent. Some people want to be astronauts or, Rhodes scholars. I just wanted to be in the Bureau.
Yeah. Did you, well, obviously you were planning on going to college after high school, right?
Yeah, I was very fortunate. Folks had plans for me to go to school. So started off at the University of Alabama in Birmingham. Roll Tide. I was in engineering. Industrial engineering. But my old coach, he finally said, you're in college now. I think you're serious about this FBI thing. So I want to put you in touch with the recruiter. Well, I thought that was going to be my silver bullet. I was, a shoe-in. But the recruiter, she goes, you're studying engineering. Yeah. Well, we're not hiring engineers. We're hiring accountants and lawyers. So, I abandoned engineering, but law school would have been 3 more years. But she told me then, this is in the 80s, there was a high demand for accountants in the FBI, such a high demand that if you got an accounting degree and could pass the FBI's accounting exam, they would waive the next requirement, which is 3 years of practical work experience.
Wow.
So if things worked out right, I could get in a whole lot younger. So I abandoned engineering. The better accounting school was down on the main campus in Tuscaloosa. So quit UAB, quit engineering, got enrolled in the accounting school, was finally finished with that. I made it in 4 years. Called the recruiter, said, okay, I'm ready for that accounting test. She said, well, how old are you? So I'm 22. She's like, well, you got to be at least 23. Call us in a year. So then I had to get a real job.
What'd you do then?
Well, I took a job with a really good firm out on the East Coast as an accountant, an auditor. And it was great. I mean, I had a company car and, an office, but it's just really not what I wanted to do. So as soon as I could, I made that call to the Norfolk recruiter and said, can I take the accounting test? Because that was the first thing. And she said, sure. So I got past that test, then got past the new agents test, and was sitting in Quantico when I was 24 years old.
Good for you, man. What year was that?
1988.
Oh, we just missed each other. I went through there, the DE Academy in 87.
Yep. Y'all were still there on facility now. Things have changed a little bit since we went through.
Yeah, we finally got our own little place there. They put together a couple of outhouses and a barn and trained pretty well. But no, it's a very nice academy.
It is a nice academy.
The Bureau Academy is very nice as well, but you've heard the term gerbil tubes, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, that's what it felt like when you're in there.
Yeah, the glass tubes connecting all the buildings. You really never had to go outside, in between classes.
My old DEA partner, Javier Pena, and I, up until the end of 25, the Bureau started inviting us up to speak to the National Academy classes. So it was, you go back to Quantico, whether it's the DEA side or the FB side, it's like going back home almost,
Right. Well, it's good times. The academies are great. You make good friends. I'm still in contact with a lot of my academy classmates. You're in sort of close quarters for months at a time. You develop good friendships.
So when you were in the academy, did you have to write any memos for things that you did that might have been just a little bit questionable?
Well, we used to, towards the end, do surveillance exercises outside the academy gates, outside in some of the nearby towns like Woodbridge. And somehow I managed to misplace my training credentials, which is a no-no. So, I got to explain, yes, I lost my credentials. It was the training credentials, but still, they treat them like they're real. And I did have to write a little memo about that.
Was that all?
Never lost them since, though. Yeah, that was it. That's as bad as it got.
I might have had to write more than one. But that's not my story. It's your story today. So we'll just keep my story private.
Right.
Actually, longtime listeners have heard several of my stories here. But and then, when you get out in the field, you say you never lost them again?
No. That was lesson learned. Never lost them again.
Oh, I guess I'm a slow learner because I lost them more on the job than I was trying to get into the job.
That's crazy.
Not lost them, misplaced them. I was always failed to come up with them. The scary part's when you misplace that gun.
Never happened. Yeah, that didn't happen. But I was in Colorado Springs once on a bankruptcy fraud case in a rented car, and they did slide out of my pocket up under the seat. So there were a couple of hours I was a little concerned, but I was going to disassemble that vehicle before I called anybody.
Absolutely. I mean, you talk about a pucker factor, and I mean, it's not the end of the world, but to us,
it's a bad feeling.
Yeah. We know what we went through to earn those credentials and that badge. And so, when you're going through the academy now, a lot of our listeners are familiar with our selection process about how we get stationed somewhere. So they're familiar with the wish list. What was on your wish list back then?
Well, the Bureau changes, as I'm sure the DEA does as well. But our choices back then, they were called the top 12, the big 12 offices like LA, Chicago, Miami, New York, or other. Those were the choices. So, you can mark a box for top 12 and they would send you to one of those, or you could choose the other box and be sent anywhere. Well, I didn't want to roll the dice on Miami or New York or LA, so I chose other. Because I was an accountant, I was sent to Oklahoma. That was the bank failure time, the oil bust time. So a lot of us that had financial backgrounds were sent either to Oklahoma or Texas to handle that oil bust and all the fraud and bankruptcy fraud that came from it.
How many agents were in Oklahoma when you got there? Do you remember?
It was about 120, if I recall correctly.
Wow.
And we cover the whole state. So this division, the Oklahoma City division, covers the entire state of Oklahoma. Around 120, as I recall.
That's the thing, man. We've got offices where, well, I know the Bureau, here we go again. I can't talk today. The Bureau had the resident offices where you might have one or two guys, and then they would be augmented by a larger office whenever they needed assistance.
Right. Yeah. So we had headquarters office, they call it, was in Oklahoma City. Then we had a large resident agency, the RA in Tulsa, and then smaller 2-man RAs as far out as like Woodward, way out in the Panhandle.
There's some good cops out in Oklahoma, man. We've met a few. We've worked with a few out there. Just fine people.
Yep, for sure.
Excellent. So you show up in Oklahoma now, and you're an accountant with an FBI badge. What was the first case they had you work on?
Some of them don't start out as particularly complex, but I had one. It was a lot of complaints came in about a fraud perpetrated usually on some older people. It was basically an investment scam. There was no internet then, so it was ads in the newspaper, inducing people to invest in a franchise for blood pressure machines. So you could go, you see gumball machines in restaurant, waiting areas. So these are basically blood pressure machines. You could put a quarter in and get your blood pressure, but everybody just got stalled. The machines never came. And eventually when they did, they didn't work. So I talked to one of the victims who had received one of the few machines that were actually distributed. We sent that to the lab because I had quit engineering. I needed it, reviewed by an actual engineer. And they said, this is not even nowhere near a blood pressure machine. This is just some lights and buttons. So we were able to show that was a fraud, but we had to trace the money. The guy ended up being in Atlanta. I got a warrant for him under all his aliases and his true name, but it was late the night he was actually indicted. And I thought, well, I can either go home and put him in NCIC in the morning or go back to the office and go ahead and get him entered. So I did that. It was about 7 p.m. Got him in NCIC, went home, 1 a.m., phone rings. It's the Border Patrol. They said, hey, we got your guy crossing into Mexico.
Really?
What do you want to do? I said, yeah, arrest him. And they said, well, what do you want to do about his dog? I said, well, can you hang on to his dog and we'll figure out something. But yeah, we got him. That lesson learned there is go ahead and finish your job. Don't go home first.
That's my dad, when he retired from the ministry, he and my uncle had a carpet store. And when I started at a very young age working for him, about 14 and just mopping floors and that kind of thing, but eventually got to where I'm working in the warehouse, and my boss was a guy named Gary. And the one thing he always told me was, if you're going to do a job, just do it right the first time. And,
right.
And it's corny. Those are corny sayings, but those are things that stick with you through life, and it pays off.
Well, had I not entered him that night, he would have crossed the border, and we would have gotten him eventually, but then you'd have to extradite from Mexico. So I'm happy I missed supper and went ahead and got him entered.
Yeah. Now, when you got to Oklahoma, were you married or not?
Not at the time. I married a federal probation officer I met through the job. Had another white-collar case. We'd indicted about a dozen people. And as you know, they write the pre-sentence reports for the federal judge. So I spent a lot of time with this young lady, and we got to know each other pretty well and ended up getting married.
Good for you. And how long have you been married now?
Oh, gosh. So we got married in 93. So it's been many moons since.
I was getting ready to say, you better get that right.
Yeah. A lot of water under the bridge. She's put up with a lot with my job. I was gone more than I was here, it seems. So yeah, she's a saint.
Yeah, I refer to our families as our unsung heroes because they put up with our crap while we're out running, gunning, doing what we think is important. And we expect them to take care of the family, take care of the house, take care of whatever problems come up, take care of the bills, and then when we get home, baby us.
Right. Well, and you can't bring your dirty laundry home, come home, kick the dog or something. So yeah, the families for law enforcement and our military partners are integral to really to our well-being.
Very much so. And so, everybody, I alluded at the beginning that there were some other things that our accountant friend here had done before, and he's got a partner, and I read his book, by the way, and I told you the name of his book is Hazardous Devices. But your partner kind of got you interested in something else, didn't he?
Right. So again, when I was little, the TV shows like SWAT and the FBI story, Untouchables. That book had been written, so it was kind of glamorous, a little more glamour than bankruptcy fraud. But my training agent, we were on probation for a year once we got in. So my training agent was a great guy, former naval officer. He was an electrical engineer himself, but he was also the sniper team leader on the SWAT team. And he was just a marksman, recognized national marksman outside the Bureau. And so since I was sort of under his wing, he would shoot a lot, which meant I got to go shoot a lot.
Yeah.
And every Wednesday we would go out with we had M16s back in the day and his custom bolt action 308. So I got to put a lot of rounds downrange, and he and I got along really, really well. So when I was eligible, he said, why don't you, first of all, try out for the SWAT team, and then if you make the team, we'll get you into sniper school. So that's really what I wanted to do as that 10-year-old boy, was be a sniper. And I got to do that very early on in my career.
Did you grow up hunting and shooting and fishing?
Oh, sure. Alabama. Yeah, we did a good bit of that.
Wow. Back then, did you ever really think that you'd make a sniper?
No, I didn't think I'd get in the FBI.
Yeah.
So I sure didn't think. Yeah, that recruiter, that first talk, and when she, said, "All right, you're an engineer, we don't want you," she also said less than 6% of applicants get in. So basically, get ready for a rough ride. But I'm thankful the way it worked out, and then to have Roy Foreman was my training agent, great guy. He's passed away now, but to have him as a mentor and kind of give me the easy hand was nice.
Well, that's what senior agents are supposed to do. Your training agents are supposed to help mentor you, kind of cultivate you as you go along, introduce you to new things to see what fits for you. Because not everybody, I didn't want to be a sniper. I liked the SWAT team type thing, but I never saw myself as a sniper. So it sounds like a really good training officer you had there.
Oh, he was a great guy. Yeah, he was a good man.
And let me just say, we had Jerry Williams on here not long ago, a retired FBI agent. She has the FBI Case File Review, which is an extremely popular podcast. If you haven't listened to it, I highly encourage you to do that. Jerry and I went to Podfest Expo 26. I think it was the total name on it. 3-day seminar on podcast, so I could learn how to spell podcast. But man, she held my hand the whole time we were there. But that was her role. It was to work white collar crime and fraud cases. And I mean, she talked about Ponzi schemes. She talked about millions and millions of dollars in fraud cases. And think about it, if you work your whole life and you're able to save a little bit of money and somebody is able to scam you, wouldn't you like to have somebody that knows what the hell they're doing to come in and look at your case? I mean, I will never have that kind of money, because Jerry told me, she told our whole audience how much money you probably need to have before the Bureau would take a look at it. But still, have somebody that's willing to come and take a look at your case, that means something.
Well, when I got a little more long in the tooth in the Bureau, I had a couple of trainees, and one of them, his background was undercover narcotics for a local police department. And they assigned him to a white collar squad. And some of these cases last 3 or 4 or 5 years. And he said, I think I've got to quit. I'm used to doing a deal, kicking in a door, and then going to the next one, not waiting 5 years to get an information on some banker. I said, well, just give it time. You'll find your place. And he ended up being one of our technically trained agents and doing some pretty cool stuff. So I'm glad he didn't quit.
Yeah. When you said that, the first thing that came into my mind is a bull in a china shop.
Yeah, that's why I hire accountants to do the accounting thing, and former military and our law enforcement guys are usually on the reactive squads. So they'll find a fit for you. Just got to let it shake out.
Yeah. So to be a sniper, especially in the Bureau, you had to make the SWAT team first, you said, but what all training? I mean, it's not just training locally. You got to go back to the academy. What do you have to go do to qualify as a sniper?
Right. So the FBI sniper program is just for the FBI agents. Then, because of some financial constraints, they would do regional schools. So the Quantico team came out with us. And since Roy was going to be my partner, and plus he just loved to shoot, he went through it with me. It was in January. I don't know if you've ever been to Oklahoma, but it's not like Satellite Beach. It was cold and windy and flat. It was sleeting and snowing. And, you're in a prone position out on a wood line, several hundred yards out. And it's not just the marksmanship. It's getting into position, knowing what kind of information to relay. Basically, it's the eyes and ears for command. So there's a lot more to it than just the firearms.
Did you maintain that qualification as a sniper throughout your entire career?
No. So after the Branch Davidian event in Waco, I was there for 51 days. And then that's when I met the first FBI bomb technician. And I didn't even know we'd had bomb technicians. So they showed up. I was on scene while the compound there in Waco was still smoldering. And these guys approached. So I stopped them because that was my job at the time and said, "Now, who are you and what are you doing?" And they said, "Well, we're FBI bomb technicians. We're here in case there are any IEDs in what's left of the compound." I said, "What do you mean FBI bomb technicians? What do you do?" And they said, "Well, the FBI trains and certifies all the non-military bomb techs in the country. And we go around teaching classes, post-blast classes, blowing things up around the world." And I was like, "All right, how do I do that? I want that job." So that's how I ended up being a bomb tech.
How long had you been a sniper when that happened? And you mentioned Waco. If you could tell us a little bit more about that too.
Right. So I had already been on the SWAT team for a couple of years. I had been a sniper for a couple of years. And I mentioned my wife. We had just gotten married. And we were unpacking from our honeymoon. And one of her bridesmaids called on the hard line. And that's how you talked back then, was on a hardline telephone. And she said, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Well, yeah, we're fine." Why? Because we'd been overseas, hadn't seen the news. She said, "Well, I saw 4 agents had been killed." Well, I hadn't heard, so we flipped on CNN, which was really the only news channel at the time, and saw the events down in Waco at the Branch Davidian compound. And as we're watching the news, because I was on the team, I had a pager. So only special units had pagers back then. And it was the call out. And my wife said, "Now, how does this work?" I said, "Well, I'm going to pack for about 3 days and I'll let you know when we get there." Of course, it turned into a 51-day thing. And that was her introduction to the FBI.
When you were in Waco out there at the complex, how far away was the hotel where you guys were staying? And did everybody know who you were?
It was pretty easy to pick us out, because we left as a group and came back as a group. We stayed in Waco at a national hotel chain. And of course, this was an unprecedented event that had never happened before. So we were there for quite some time. And I remember coming back from a shift and the manager met us in the lobby. And he goes, "Hey, we appreciate what y'all are doing, but we have a basketball team coming in to play Baylor, so y'all need to get out."
Priorities.
So we got thrown out of our hotel. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Life goes on.
Yeah. But 51 days, that's a long time.
It was a long time. Of course, it ended tragically. It was a horrible thing to witness.
Were you there when it actually caught fire?
So our shift had not started. I was watching the news coverage. I saw it go up. It burned so quickly, but yeah, so our team was then deployed to secure it so that the Texas Rangers could come in. We were all about transparency. So, the Rangers were going to come in, and that's what we were doing. It was still burning, still smoldering while we were there. And, I remember there was a cinder block, room, sort of a last safe haven in there. Of course, it's cinder block, so it didn't burn. But when I stuck my head in there, I remember the rubble was about hip high on me, and the walls were just rimmed with long guns. And as the recovery process began, that's where the remains of the kids and women were found. Were in that cinder block area.
That's horrible.
It was horrible.
Those are things that you never forget.
No, and it too is the magnitude. The event itself was unprecedented. But you see, you've been on the job a long time. I remember there was one little girl. She was actually the last little girl that David Koresh let go. She came to me. One of the hostage rescue team members delivered her to our perimeter line in a Bradley. The ramp of the Bradley came down. He handed me this little blonde-haired girl, as I recall. And she was, of course, scared. So I was talking to her, gave her to a human health welfare services agent, but she was the last child that was let go.
Jeez, that's when it breaks my heart when the kids get involved in anything.
Right. Yeah. I didn't work crimes against children because that's just not for me. I'd rather take the bomb apart than work something like that.
Yeah, and I don't think I could work either of those jobs. I mean, it's certainly not the child exploitation cases or the child abuse cases, but that bomb tech thing doesn't interest me in the least. I got to say, I'm glad there's experts out there like you that are willing to do that.
Well, that was never on my radar. I thought I had peaked in my career getting to be, a sniper because that was sort of my end game when I was younger. But this is just a blessing. It fell in my lap. I had another great mentor, that man I was talking to, a man named Jim Norman. He's passed away now as well, but he told me, I was pretty excited. I said, look, I want that job. How can I get that position? And he said, well, there are only about 200 or 220 FBI bomb techs on the planet at any one time. So, don't get your hopes up, but I'll help you if I can. And he did, true to his word. He mentored me, and we worked together, really for several years. He was another great example of how you can help somebody.
And at that time, was there roughly 10,000 FBI agents?
About 12,000 in there, and we're up to 14, 16,000 now.
Oh, wow. Do this is a little bit off topic, but do as the Bureau, do they have a lot of vacancies now?
There's a lot of turnover, Murph, and, we're in some strange times. People that can retire seem to be retiring. It's a difficult job in the best of circumstances. You did it for a long time. I got in so young, I could have retired at 49. But then what do? You're 49 years old, and I had the best job in the world. So I stayed until I was mandatory. They offered me an extension, but when you've had enough, done enough. I'd seen a lot of these major events domestically and internationally, and 31 years was plenty for me.
Yeah. Any other high-profile sniper cases you were involved with before you became? Well, first of all, when you became a bomb tech, did you have to give up the sniper role?
No, I didn't have to. So all those jobs were collateral duty. So when I was a sniper, I was still working financial cases. And then as things, the nation changed, the world changed really as terrorism became more prevalent. Jim and I met in Waco. That was at the fire in 93. I was fortunate to get selected to go to the Hazardous Devices School, the FBI's bomb school, which is down in Huntsville, Alabama, in 94. I finished up, was certified for 53 weeks until Timothy McVeigh bombed the Murrah building. That was my first case. So Waco, we had done, manhunts and tactical operations where snipers may have been deployed, but that unprecedented event in Waco was sort of the first real out-of-state deployment for me. And then my first case as a bomb technician was the Murrah building.
Wow. Talking about getting your feet wet. It's like jumping out of the frying pan into the fire, isn't it?
It was. And to answer your question, I was still on the SWAT team, still technically assigned to a white collar squad, because the bomb tech thing was, collateral. But of course, the only example of a large vehicle borne IED was the first Trade Center attack, which was horrible. That was about a 1,200 pound device. This was, around 5,000 pounds of explosives. Destroyed, a city block downtown, 300 buildings. This was just unprecedented. So, yeah. And then you asked about other cases. I guess 9/11, would come into that, bracketing some other things like the Atlanta Olympic bombing, and then an undercover investigation, which was my last case.
And let's save that till the end.
Sure.
And I was going to ask you is what are the qualifications to be a bomb technician? I mean, I know there's special training, but how do you told us how you got into it, but just showing interest, but do they test you?
Oh, right. So there's a test in the field. Can you perform certain activities, wearing the bomb suit? A lot of it's, logic, temperament. You have to be kind of a rule follower. A lot of times you'll hear, when things don't go well. And when you look at it, there was some little detail or some shortcut that was made. And sadly, we learn by others' mistakes. When I first got in, FBI bomb techs really didn't have any safety equipment, no PPE. But when our agents got injured on a range, well, then we started getting proper PPE. So sadly, it's driven by mistakes or mishaps. But with terrorism as it is today, we have that counterterrorism and weapons of mass destruction mission as well. So technology's improved, our equipment's improved, training's improved, just as a function of the needs of the world, really.
So you go in and I'm so at 53 weeks as a bomb technician, and this is your first call up. You're still kind of a rookie, right? You've been through the training, but this is your first real world experience.
Right. So we finished the HDS, the Hazardous Devices School, finished post-blast school, and then the Evidence Response Team, which is the FBI's version of CSI, was brand new. So I was on the developmental team for our ERT. Again, this was all new. This hadn't really happened in the U.S. before. So yes, I'd had some training, but not on a 5,000-pound post-blast scene. Nobody had.
With multiple casualties. Just horrific. Anybody that was alive at that time remembers the sights on television of the building after that explosion had gone off. Where do you start? How do you come into a scene like that? What's the first thing you go do?
Well, there is a plan. That's the one thing about the Bureau is there are plans in place. And at that point, it's just a magnitude issue. A post-blast scene, we still do the same kinds of things, but the search encompassed city blocks, not just a small room or something. And on a personal note, I'd mentioned how my wife, I sort of abandoned her for Waco, and we met because she was a federal probation officer. She drove out of that building 2 minutes before detonation.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's the grace of God. She's still alive. She left out of the west garage, drove in front of the device, got over to the highway when the overpressure pushed her car. She thought she had driven into a construction hole. But initially, I didn't know where she was. So you asked what I did first. We call it a preliminary survey or a walkabout to see, was this a bomb? Was it a plane crash or a gas main explosion? But I was also interested, of course, in where she may be. So I talked to one of the court security officers who said he had seen her. I later found out he had not, but he could tell, I needed to focus a little bit. So good or bad, that's what he told me. But she had the foresight to page me back into my own voicemail. Our office was off site. And she left me a message saying that she was okay and that her office had gone to their relocation site.
Well, so now you're able to catch your breath. And then, I read a little bit in the book where I think you went up on another level of a building and then everybody scrambled because they were afraid it was going to collapse.
Right. So the Murrah building was 9 stories tall. And on the western edge, it was elevated. The second story was basically elevated where the kids' playground was. There was daycare there, America's Kids Daycare. And children were killed, of course, in the bombing. But initially, part of my job was to just try to assess the blast pattern, the seat of the blast, we call it. So I was up on that second story with a Oklahoma Highway Patrol trooper, just trying to get a sense of the debris pattern. And, of course, it's loud and it's just absolute chaos. But then I noticed all the first responders flee in the building, which was a little disconcerting. But as all that's happening, a helicopter came in from our south behind us. Well, I thought the helicopter was going to crash. That's just what went through my mind because it was low and everybody was running to the north. But the helicopter passed. It was a police helicopter. And then I could hear somebody say second device, second bomb. We train our state and local partners and our FBI personnel, particularly in bombing scenes, to be conscientious and look for those secondary and even tertiary devices. So it's possible. And the standard operating procedure is to evacuate and get a plan to address that new threat. Well, I was basically on the second floor with this trooper, and the order was to evacuate. So about the quickest way down, there remains today a row of trees on the east side of the Murrah building. So we were able to kind of jump to one of those tree limbs and shimmy down and go to the safe side of a bomb truck and get a plan together to resolve this, what they thought was a second bomb.
Was there a second bomb?
Well, there was a large wooden crate with stickers, bright orange stickers reading explosives. Looks like a duck, walks like a duck. The folks did exactly what they should. So we sent bomb techs in, recovered the crate, put it in, we had what's called a single vent trailer back then, took it out to a bomb range and examined it. When we opened the crate, it looked like a TOW missile, an anti-tank weapon, which begs the question, why is there a TOW missile in the federal building? But military ordnance falls under the purview of the military. So again, we work very closely with our state and local law enforcement partners, but our military partners as well. So I called the commander of the 761st Explosive Ordnance Disposal Group down at Fort Sill. It's about 65 miles away. They had seen what had happened on television. And I said, look, I think we've got a TOW missile we pulled out of the building, and I need to know what you think about that. So they dispatched a team, great guys. I'd worked with them before. They did their thing and said, yeah, this is a TOW missile, but it's inert. It's been weighted, adapted to appear real, but there's no hazard. And then, of course, the question was, why was that in the federal building? Well, all of the records have been destroyed. So, as you may know, TOW missiles are sort of a fire and forget weapon. That tube is just discarded once it's been fired. So there was a serial number on the tube. We traced the serial number actually back to Redstone, where it had been fired in training. At that point, it was repurposed for an undercover sting operation for another federal agency that did office in the Murrah building. And that's what it was there for. But it postponed recovery efforts for about 40 minutes that until we were able to get it out, and then of course determine that it was inert.
Yeah, and I got to say, I love the way you refer to other agencies. You're not identifying anybody.
That's habit, I'm afraid. So
we all know who handles explosives. Might be in their title.
Yeah, maybe. Anyway, yeah.
So from there, because I want to talk about different cases you were involved with as we go along here. We're just scratching the surface. But one thing I want to mention to start with is you folks have already heard Barry here talking a little bit, and everything he's talking about is we. I haven't heard him say I yet. Have you? Because that's what this is teamwork, and that's what it is in law enforcement. And look, DEA busts on the FBI, and the FBI busts on the ATF, and they bust on the marshals bust on DEA. And it's just state and locals are in there. We have a good time. There's no ill intent meant on that. It's a way of dealing with stress and anxiety a lot of times, but it's a brotherhood and a sisterhood. You hear me talk about we bleed blue here, and we actually do. It's the blue family. So I just want to stress that teamwork is how you get anything done.
Absolutely.
You get those, we're guilty as anybody. We've got a few Rambos in here that think, they're all that in a bag of chips and they can just conquer the world and they're going to be the king one day. But careers don't seem to go too far when they act like that.
Well, it is teamwork inside your agency and outside. As I said, the Bureau certifies all the non-military bomb techs in the country. So I had the privilege of traveling across this country and actually globally, training with different agencies, and just the quality and caliber of people you get to work with is really amazing.
I agree. I want to drop back to the fraud case when you do some of the fraud cases, because you outlined several of them in your book. And it does. Boy, it was years on a lot of those cases, getting people to prosecution, but takes a lot of patience, right?
A lot of patience.
What, out of all the fraud cases you worked, what would you consider the one that you're most proud of?
Well, I had one case, made it to Unsolved Mysteries, the old black and white, Robert Stack version. So that was a great case. But probably the most interesting from an accountant's point of view was an offshore insurance company, multi-million dollars. They would basically insure primarily truck drivers who had an accident and really couldn't get affordable insurance anywhere else. And of course, they have to have insurance. So they would write these policies mostly for those guys, but there was never really any insurance. They would just launder it all offshore. And so it was literally chasing the money. And I ended up finding the official company's comptroller, who was a CPA. He had signed all these false financial statements, which is bank fraud. And then the SEC had relied on them. They actually manipulated the stock market, which was kind of complicated. But I was able to flip him, and he explained the entire fraud. And he was working with a stockbroker, an actual certified stockbroker in the Caribbean. So we flew down, interviewed him. He basically supported what the accountant had told us. But then he showed up dead mysteriously on a yacht on some Caribbean island, and was, as I recall, he was cremated before there was really, I'm not completely sure to this day that was actually him. But at any rate, we got the principals indicted and convicted, and it was very satisfying just because of the size of the case, the complexity of the case.
I remember one case, I think it was there in Oklahoma, where they came in to set up some type of business, and they hired local people, or they were bringing investors in to see empty boxes.
Yeah, that it was a medical scam case. Again, it started out relatively small, but if you can imagine a world without the internet, you and I remember the days when you would get a newspaper to look for a job. So this college student was looking for a job, and he saw a want ad for a new business that was starting a headquarters here in Oklahoma City. So he went, should have been a little suspicious. He met a guy at a motel down by the airport for his job interview and said, we're looking for a manager for our new medical supply company. We're going to start it up. We're international, but our main office will be here eventually, and we want you to be on the ground floor. Threw a bunch of money at this kid, and he became the manager. So he set up an office down on one of the main streets there in Oklahoma City. And his job was to hire basically a bunch of his fraternity friends as the office staff. Again, they were very well paid. But soon these large crates that were empty started showing up. And he said, we're going to send our investors to you. Let them see the warehouse. Never let them in there, because that's an OSHA violation, supposedly. And we're going to ship you out this giant map of the world that has these blinking lights to show where our business entities are held. Just show them the blinking map, and we'll have a battery of phones that your people should be on when they come. And our chauffeur will deliver them to you. So sure enough, these guys would show up in a chauffeured limousine, but the chauffeur would never come in. He would always stay outside. So it was really well planned. Nobody saw anybody except this one college kid. So we ended up doing simultaneous warrants and simultaneous interviews of every employee. And the only people they could point to was this college kid. So in the search warrant, we recovered one document that had a single fingerprint, ran the print, and it came back to a known con man that had done a similar scheme down in Lower Alabama years before. Oddly enough, his name was Frederick Krueger, so I've arrested Freddy Krueger.
All right.
But,
you solved a lot of cases on that one.
Solved a lot of cases, but Mr. Krueger and his prior associate from the previous case, nobody knew where they were. So that we got on Unsolved Mysteries, because that's how you found people back then. And we were covered in leads, telephone calls. And from those calls, we arrested Freddy Krueger down in Texas. And just great evidence. They were converting the money into gold, which is, you can exchange it anywhere. But when he was arrested, he had gold Krugerians in his pocket, which was helpful. And the second man, it took a few more weeks to catch. We found him in Atlanta. They were tried separately. But the second man got sent to a federal facility that was low security, minimum security, because it's white collar crime. So one day the correctional officers found his orange jumpsuit out by the roadside. He had escaped. So they searched his cell, found a bunch of letters of how to speak Spanish. And at that point, as you know, marshals began to look for him because they go after the escapees. They called and said, where do you think he might be? I said, well, he's got one daughter, I believe it was in North Carolina. She may know. So they interviewed her, and she said, look, I haven't seen him, but he does like to smoke this one particular kind of cigar. So they went there were 2 cigar shops in this little town. First guy said, I don't know him, never seen him. Second guy says, oh yeah, he's here all the time. Matter of fact, that's him pulling up right now.
Really?
So the marshals and some locals go out, marshals get out of the car. Well, he tries to run them over, takes off, shots are fired. They eventually catch him, of course, and he goes back to prison to finish his sentence plus the escape. Yeah, it was crazy. To start off as a white collar crime, end up in a fugitive shootout with the marshals was not the norm.
Well, and I'll tell you what, the marshals, that's not an organization to fool with.
No, they're great at their job. Great at their job.
They had, because we were all DOJ, they had the responsibility of trying to track our fugitives as well, and DEA. Just fantastic. I mean, just unbelievable.
That's what they do. They're very good at it.
But it was just interesting the complexity or the length that people are willing to go to try to purport these frauds on people and take their money. You remember how many millions of dollars was involved in that medical device?
Oh, that's been a long time ago. It was easily six figures, if not well into the millions. Of course, then you try to recover what you can. It was expensive to keep the fraud going, to perpetuate the fraud, because they had to pay for the limo. Turns out Freddy Krueger, as I recall, was the chauffeur. That's why he would never go inside. But it's expensive. They had to rent the facilities, pay the employees really, really well. So what they ended up with was, several $100,000. But of course, we seized what we could, converted the gold to cash, and gave that back to the victims as part of the restitution order.
But they never come out even, do they?
Oh, no. Most of the money was just gone.
And personally, I think anybody that does that to people that have worked hard for their money, I don't care if you're a millionaire or you're a pauper, if you've earned it, you've earned it.
Right. Well, some of it, if the deal seems to be too good to be true, maybe it is. But this was a very well organized and thoroughly considered fraud plan. They had just the anonymity. There's so many layers to make sure nobody really saw who they were. It was really intriguing.
Yeah. And so now, since we've already talked about this quite a bit, everybody, I can tell you the rest of the title of his book. It's Hazardous Devices, Memoir of an FBI Bomb Technician, Accountant, and Sniper. And you can see this is what the book cover looks like. Let me get it up so you can see it just right, because I got other things blocking my screen here. But highly recommend you take a look at this book. And for those that you are listening to this, you can find it on Amazon. I think you said Barnes & Noble. We've got a website we're going to talk about eventually. And the book just came out December of 2025. Is that correct?
Yep. It's kind of fresh.
If you enjoy reading this kind of stuff, it's a quick read. I'm not kidding you. It's just, I've been living with Murphy's Law here the last several days. My main computer screen broke. How do you break a computer screen?
That's my luck as well.
So I'm working off an old computer here. I'm just hoping that everything's recording correctly. We'll see.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Fraud cases. Okay, so you went back to when you first got married, got home from your divorce. I mean, your honeymoon. I'm sorry. Jeez. I didn't mean to say that.
Slip of the tongue.
I know. Well, I had a practice wife before I had my real wife, so I don't know how that thing goes. But you get home from your honeymoon and you tell your wife you're going to be gone 3 days, and now you're gone 51. And now all of a sudden you got all these cases coming up that are taking you down the Caribbean and all parts of the world. At any point, does your wife come to you and like, you didn't tell me about any of this. What the heck?
Well, she's awesome. As you mentioned, our families are very supportive. What I'll say is anything I wanted to try to do, the Bureau has a lot of opportunities. I was a sniper when we met, but then bomb school was never on the horizon. So I was gone for weeks at Hazardous Devices School. And then, of course, when the bombing occurred, basically a year after, she narrowly escaped, and we knew people that didn't survive. So, do you go home or do you do your job? There were only 2 FBI bomb techs in the state at the time until other resources came. So she was really good to let me go to work. She's pretty self-sufficient, and she's like, I'm fine here. You go do your thing. And she was great through that. I worked that case for about 2.5 years. With about 1,400 other people. It was an unbelievable investigation. But what's strange, Murph, is I mentioned there are only a couple of hundred FBI bomb technicians. And even though we had this major investigation ongoing, we still had other events to cover, national special security events. So my unit at headquarters, called the Critical Incident Response Group, handles assignments for all of our bomb techs. And the unit chief knew I was from Birmingham. My parents were still down there and knew we had been working, 7 days a week, 12, 14-hour days. He said, look, if you can get away, we still need bomb techs to run teams at the Olympic venues in Atlanta. So if you think you can get away, we'll put you at the soccer venue in Birmingham as a little break. You'll get to see your folks.
Wow.
Run a counter IED team at the venue there in Birmingham, get you a couple of weeks to catch your breath. Well, that sounded pretty good until Eric Rudolph detonated the bomb there in Centennial Park. I was sitting outside this little restaurant bar with some of the Olympic officials, and the bartender came out and said, "Hey, what about that bomb in Atlanta?" And we all said, "Hey, that's really not funny." He goes, "No, really." And he turned on the television, and there it was. I had a cell phone by then, so I said, get to Atlanta, and I was able to support the teams there while they processed the post-blast scene. I and my team backfilled their position for the rest of the Olympic venues until closing ceremonies.
Wow! So how much time did you get in Birmingham then?
We were there for just maybe 10 days before the bombing. Yeah.
So you did get to visit your family. That was good.
I did get to see my parents. Yes. Yeah.
Is there anything about the bombing in Atlanta at the Olympics that, I'm not asking you to divulge secrets, but it seems like the media just really blew that whole thing up and in the media convicted the wrong person. When in reality it was a lone wolf out there that it took years to catch, and it was just I don't believe in luck. I don't believe in coincidence, but just the cop happened to be in the right place at the right time at that trash dumpster when this guy's digging through the trash. And I think it was Tennessee or North Carolina, wasn't it?
North Carolina, as I recall. Yeah, Eric Rudolph.
Any details that you can tell us about now that people probably don't know about for the Olympic bombing?
Well, there have been movies and documentaries. As you said, Richard Jewell was kind of named in the media, and he actually, Attorney General Janet Reno actually sent him a letter of apology.
Wow.
Because that name had been divulged. But what I see now, I do some speaking now in retirement. This 24-hour news cycle, you got to feed that machine. And some in the media, if they don't get facts, they'll just kind of run with what they think, which is sometimes unfortunate. Even when we were at Waco, the times I was able to call back home, my wife would say, "Well, I saw on television, something fantastic," or, I said, don't even listen to the news. So, that, of course, Mr. Jewell, it turned out to be Eric Rudolph. He killed a police officer with another device in Birmingham. But yeah, there's a large manhunt. That was another special case for the Bureau task force. And he was found, as you said, rummaging for food in the trash eventually. And he's now sitting in the Supermax facility with Richard Reed, the shoe bomber, and some other infamous people.
Yeah, that's if they don't get the death penalty, that's where they belong. Locked down 23 hours a day, no contact.
You're not going to escape from there, and like my other guy did. So.
Yeah. You mentioned the National Special Security events. Can you explain to us what those are?
Well, it changes over time, but think of Super Bowls, political conventions. There's a threshold that is met, and if that threshold is met because of the needs of the special event, then federal assets can be brought in. I've worked a number of Super Bowls, a number of Olympic Games, G8 summits. It's anything high profile that in today's environment would be seen as a likely target for violent protests on either end of the spectrum or terrorism.
Wow. How many of those events do you, I don't know, how many do you think there are per year?
Murph, that would be a guess. I've been gone since 2019. I imagine that threshold is being met more frequently now just because of the environment we're in. You look back at the 60s and 70s, these things are usually cyclical. But when you have events like what's happening now in Iran, You worry about lone wolves, as you mentioned, that have some political affiliation. But yeah, the political dimensions, sports events, like I said, the Super Bowl, went to the baseball tournaments. It's all fun and games, literally, until something happens.
Do you ever get to watch a Super Bowl game?
Actually, I have. I was kind of the dinosaur at the time. I was an FBI bomb technician for 26 years. Most people have a career of 20 years. So, a couple of Super Bowls, I had teams inside, which there were teams outside. There was a freak ice storm in Dallas for one of them, and I'd parked my brand new response truck right against the building. A, to keep it out of the way of the snowplows, but secondly, so I'd be closer to my gear. And before the game began, I had a paramedic on my team. His radio said, people injured outside. Well, of course, you think the worst. So we went out. But as it turns out, the heater in the Superdome had heated the retractable roof enough to cause all the snow and ice to slide off, and it crushed my truck. Brand new response vehicle, the first deployment. And it blew out the windshield, tore open the cover on the back. Yeah. Well, that was another memo. You asked about memos earlier. So.
Oh, no, I bet that was an extensive memo.
Oh, yeah. Can't make it up.
No. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then another strange event. Well, it's another Super Bowl. You'll remember when the lights went out. It was still the longest Super Bowl on record because the power went out. This was in New Orleans. And we had a team. It's myself, State Trooper Bomb Tech, a couple of guys from Department of Energy with radiation detection equipment, and a K9. Well, you can't hide a team like that, and there was really no place for us to be inside the stadium. So we found a spot kind of behind a beer vendor at the top of the lower bowl. So we're kind of out of everybody's way. Happened to be on the 50-yard line. You got to be somewhere. And this kind of inebriated guy right in front of us, he goes, I paid thousands of dollars for this seat, and you guys are just standing there watching for free. Well, about the time he said that, the lights went out, and a hush fell across the stadium. And he goes, glad y'all are here. What's going on? So it's, you're not wanted till you're wanted, I guess.
You're getting ready to bust your chops, but now all of a sudden he's glad you're there.
Yep. Law enforcement sometimes is like a guard dog. You don't want to feed it till you need it. So
you don't want to poke it.
Right, for sure. Don't poke the bear.
Barry, we've been going about an hour now, buddy. We're just, again, scratching the surface. There's so many more stories we want to hear about. Ladies and gentlemen, Barry's agreed to be here with us tomorrow so we can continue telling his story. Appreciate you guys coming along as always. If you're listening to this on audio and you haven't checked out Game of Crimes on YouTube yet, do me a favor and go to YouTube, type in Game of Crimes podcast in the search bar, hit the subscribe button, listen to some episodes, see what we look like. I mean, I actually combed my hair to come on these, to be on YouTube here. So, come check it. Well, I don't have a lot to comb, but what I got left is in the right places. So until tomorrow, thank you so much for coming. Be safe out there. God bless. We'll see you then.